All right, what's up, guys? There's a new point of view of the Minnesota shooting of the ICE agent who shot Renee Nicole Good. Apparently, he was holding his phone in one hand and the gat in the other. And so we have his point of view, too. So let's just watch that real quick because that's new information and a new angle. And also, there's an analysis, too, so we'll watch that as well.
Back now with our breaking news on the deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis. Moments ago, CNN obtained video from an ICE officer's cell phone that captures the confrontation with Renee Good that preceded, at least in part, her shooting. A DHS official confirms the video was recorded on the agent's cell phone camera. We do warn you, there is profanity. This is disturbing content. Here it is.
I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you.
That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car. Oh! Fucking bitch.
This is day one.
Okay, so I see a couple things. So for starters, usually when you have a story like this, the left has a story and the right has a story. The truth is usually somewhere in between. You know, yours, mine, and the truth. It's how it's always been since the beginning of time. So one thing we saw is that she was clearly not aggressive and she clearly did not pose a threat. At the same time, she was obstructing a federal investigation. Now, the right thing for an officer to do would be, ma'am, please move your car. Ma'am, we're going to have to pull you out of the car if you don't comply. You know, and one thing I really don't like about ICE is they don't give you that chance. They just, from what I've seen, every video I've ever seen about any situation that ICE does, they just rip them out of the car, pepper spray, whatever it is. And this time, you know, they ended up shooting real bullets and killing someone. So, there was no lawful command, in my opinion. I don't think get the F out of the car is a lawful command, in my opinion. As you can see, there was clearly anger involved. He was clearly frustrated. You know, she was clearly smiling and not posing a threat. So, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think it's important to see this from all angles. There was another angle. I don't know if I have it. Let me check real quick. But it was basically across the street. And, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing. You see, you're going to have to just decide what you think. Personally, I don't think he was in danger. I think he stepped out of the way. That video does show, but there's a very good possibility because of he probably had PTSD from that car dragging him 6 months prior. That it's possible that, you know, he was trigger happy because of that. But that means he's unfit for duty. So, either way, this is a tragedy. But that is the update for this situation. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's murder, but I would say it's manslaughter. Real quick, I'm going to look up the definition of homicide because I know I know the difference between murder and manslaughter, but I'm not sure the difference between homicide and them. Definition. Oh, okay, yeah. So homicide is just the killing of one human being by another. So yeah, homicide, manslaughter. From his perspective, it's very possible it could have been self-defense because of the PTSD situation. Either way, though, I don't think he should be an officer, and I think we can all agree to that. Thank you for the heart. Thank you for the heart. I just got a heart. Thank you for the heart. Nah, but I'm actually in a much better mood today because, not gonna lie, guys, I just went to the gym and I'm in a much better mood. And although all this horrible stuff is happening, I'm in a much better state of mind to be able to give the facts and give a honest, just non-biased, calm perspective. You know, this is a tragedy and it's terrible, but I feel like it's also partially. Obviously, it happened. This is a real life event, but the media is kind of using it as a distraction because our other update is Epstein. Let's talk about Maduro first. So I haven't seen this video yet, but let's get into it. So basically, they arrested Maduro. You know, sorry, my hair is. They kidnapped. They kidnapped Maduro to try him for drug trafficking charges in New York. Right. That's been the main story. But we all know that as soon as that happened, they started going for the oil, and they've already made millions off of it. And we'll get into that too. So regime change, oil, they also didn't like him because he didn't support Israel and a bunch of other things. So that's really the main reasons behind it is oil and regime change. I was wondering how long they would keep the story of the drug trafficking, because now they're dropping charges. Now they're rewriting the indictment, and we're about to get into that. So now it's basically all about oil. And so my question is, are they doing that because... Thank you for the heart. Thank you for the heart. I'm going to stop doing that. Are they doing that because that there actually is no drug trafficking at all? Or are they doing that because it'll show that the drug trafficking is coming from the CIA? The war on drugs, I mean, there's a black market for drugs, and it's actually a decent part of our economy, and it has been, and it's to bring drugs in. And, you know, we're shifting off into conspiracy realm here, but everything I am saying is based in facts. And so let's just watch this video about Maduro. This is the update for him. Okay, so after Maduro's in custody, U.S. drops narco cartel claim. Washington's Maduro case cracks, key cartel theory quietly scrapped.
After accusing Nicolas Maduro of leading the so-called Cartel de los Soles, the United States has now made a sharp legal U-turn in its case. The U.S. Justice Department has dropped the claim that Cartel de los Soles is a real, formal criminal organization, stepping back from its earlier position. That claim had been central to the Trump administration's case against Nicolas Maduro, shaping the narrative around his alleged narco-trafficking role. However, after Maduro's capture, U.S. prosecutors quietly revised the indictment, changing how they described the alleged network. The original claim traced back to a 2020 grand jury indictment against Maduro that portrayed Cartel de los Soles as a structured cartel. In 2025, the Treasury and State Departments even designated Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist entity, amplifying the label on the world stage. Experts had long argued that the term is slang rather than an actual drug cartel structure, analysts told the New York Times. After Maduro was captured, prosecutors quietly filed a revised indictment that altered key language about his alleged network. The new version abandoned...
Maduro is pleading not guilty, by the way, just so we're all aware. He says he's not guilty.
The claim that Cartel de los Soles is an actual cartel, no longer treating it as a single hierarchical organization. Instead, the indictment now describes the term as a patronage system fueled by drug money flowing through state institutions. Prosecutors now call it a culture of corruption inside state institutions, according to the New York Times reporting on the filing. The term is now said to refer to official...
Okay, so the main how he basically got away with doing the bombing Venezuela and kidnapping him was off of narco terrorism. So drug trafficking can be classified as terrorism, you know, as in he's bringing a bunch of drugs into the nation and people are getting sick or whatever, fentanyl. Also, they were saying fentanyl, but the indictment only says cocaine. right? So there's a contradiction too. So it's just a little weird. Also, why did he change outfit 5 times on the way to America? Did you guys notice that? That's just something silly, but something weird. But he was in like a blue jumpsuit and then gray, and then, you know, this is later on, I think. Or maybe, no, I think this is getting off the plane. Now it's brown. He changed outfits, like every picture changed outfits. It was really strange. So now they're revising and they're saying it's not an official cartel, which means that it was an unlawful invasion. Even though it already was without a declaration of war, it's like extra unlawful now. Let's see what else they have to say.
Corrupted by narcotics profits rather than members of a single cartel entity. Interestingly, the new indictment mentions Cartel de los Soles only twice, a drastic reduction in emphasis. The 2020 indictment referenced the term 32 times and explicitly named Maduro as the leader of this supposed cartel. International Crisis Group's Elizabeth Dickinson calls the revised description exactly accurate.
Also, 2 things can be true at once. So you can say that we shouldn't have invaded, and you can also say that Maduro's a bad leader. You know, people say, why are you defending a dictator? And you got to look back to what happened with Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. So these were leaders that the United States didn't agree with, and we went to war with them for regime change, and we you know, ousted them and then changed it with a leader that we approve of. And you know, when we did that to Iran, Iran celebrated, and then for years there's just massive you know, just it went completely third world. Death, you know, people with machine guns on every street. So that's kind of what it turned to, right? So the whole point is that we should not be involved in that. It's not our place, it's not our duty. That they are an independent country and we should leave them alone. Sorry, I heard something outside.
According to the New York Times interview with her.
Oh, but yeah, that doesn't, you can say that, and you can also say that, you know, that doesn't mean you're saying that Maduro's a good leader. That doesn't mean you're saying that Maduro deserves to be back in power. But you know, there are Venezuelans protesting saying, bring Maduro back. And I bet you they don't even want him back in power. They just don't want America involved, and I can't blame them for that.
Dickinson said, and I quote, "The new indictment gets it right. Unlike the 2020 version. Designations don't need proof in court, and that's the difference. Clearly, they knew they could not prove it in court." Unquote. Despite the revision, Marco Rubio still referred to it as a real cartel during an interview with NBC News. Rubio claimed Maduro led the group and is now facing justice in New York on January 4th, sticking to the earlier narrative. Rubio said to NBC, and I quote, "We will continue to reserve the right to strike drug boats. They are run by criminal organizations, including the Cartel de los Soles. The leader of that cartel is now in U.S. custody." Unquote.
So that was after they, you know, rewrote the indictment. So, you know, just another, the U.S. Secretary of State lying, exaggerating. It seems to be the common theme with this administration. The facts don't really matter. You know, you just say a lie enough times and they'll eventually believe it, or the people will eventually believe it. And you know, it's not the Trump administration is the only one that did that. I mean, Biden's administration was pretty bad too. That's the problem. That's the problem with picking the lesser of two evils. You know, you pick the lesser of two evils. Like, there's a meme and it says, what's it going to be, Moloch or Baal for the next 4 years? And you know, those are two ancient demons or gods, little g, you know, that were about child sacrifice and just a bunch of horrible things. And so it's, you know, what's it going to be, Moloch or the Baal for the next 4 years? Because that's what it is. You know, we got Moloch or the Baal. That's really, I mean, it's a good example, or not example, but it's a good metaphor for what we have, because everybody says, well, I just got to pick the lesser of two evils, and that's the big problem with the two-party system. That's why something very drastically needs to change, or it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, we're watching a full-scale societal collapse in slow motion. Granted, it's not happening fast, but day by day it just gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and you know, we might already be past the point of no return. So that's what's going on with Maduro. Now, this is what Thomas Massie has to say about the Epstein files.
fact that these Epstein files still, there are millions of more documents that are still reviewing at this point.
You know, if this were a private law firm with 5% of the resources of the DOJ, this would have been done by the deadline. And they just missed another deadline, which is the report to Congress, which is supposed to list all of the politicians that are in their files, and also they're supposed to justify all the redactions 15 days after the first 30-day window. But the biggest problem isn't that they're missing the deadlines, it's what they're redacting. So they're citing the Privacy Act, and they're trying to pretend like that overrides a law that we just passed that says you can't withhold records to prevent embarrassment. They're also citing FOIA standards.
So yeah, so the main reason that these pedophiles are able to get away with this is they're citing the Privacy Act. And that basically says, you know, it would cause embarrassment, so we're not going to release them. They also were saying that the Epstein files would cause the collapse of the government. And, you know, say what you want about Zohran Mamdani, but he said, and I really liked what he said here. Let's pull up the quote just to make sure I'm exactly right. But I believe his exact words were, if dropping the files will cause your government to collapse, then your government needs to collapse. Actually, no, yeah, that's exactly what he said. So if dropping the files will cause our government to collapse, meaning that serious positions of power, serious people in positions of power, you know, we're talking the Trump administration, probably all of them. We're also talking about lifelong senators. You know, no one's safe. We don't know who's who, you know. But if it would cause a governmental collapse, and that means the majority of them were pedophiles and on Epstein's island, and that's unacceptable. And so I have to agree with Zohran Mamdani here. It's hard to pronounce that name sometimes. But I have to agree with him because that's openly admitting that they are on the list. You know what I mean? They're saying it would cause embarrassment. It would possibly cause government collapse if they released the full Epstein files. So what's on that list has to be, or the files has to be really bad. All right, we went over the files a bit last night too. Regardless, so let's let them finish talking. Let's let them finish talking.
Which don't apply to our law when they're trying to say that they don't have to release internal decisions. But our bill specifically says release internal decisions.
So what are you going to do about it?
We're looking at that.
That's a good question. And a bad answer, I would say.
Release internal decisions.
So what are you going to do about it?
We're looking at that.
What's your timeline for inherent contempt?
Yeah, that was good. What are you going to do about it? And he said, we're looking at that. Now, I really do like Thomas Massie. I think he's a good guy. I think he's probably the only good one. You know, I mean, one of like, I could count on one hand. You know what I mean? But that was a bad answer. We're looking at that. Like, let's see where he goes from there.
She gets right to the point. However we would do it, we would give the Attorney General a grace period in order to comply.
I guess I meant, when do you plan to force a vote on it? Because it's privileged, you can bring it up to the floor essentially whenever you want.
Right, so inherent contempt doesn't require the long timeline that a discharge petition would require because it's a privileged motion. So we don't have to do it now in anticipation of later. Hopefully we don't have to do it, but when we feel like we need to do it, we'll do it.
But it doesn't seem like you'd have the votes to succeed in this.
You need, what, 2 votes?
Right.
With the slim majority?
And who was the other Republican?
I think I had these conversations on these steps back this summer when you said I didn't have the votes for a discharge petition.
Yeah, this is a different matter, though.
It's actually exactly the same matter. It's just a different way of enforcing it.
You said that you hope you don't have to use it, but you have it in case you do. What's the bar? What will be the determination if you leave it on the cutting room floor, if you bring it to the floor?
So the end game here has never been to get the files. The end game is to get justice and transparency. And even if they had met the deadline, they're avoiding that by citing laws and regulations that don't apply or have been obviated by this bill. So we'll see.
Why do you think they're taking these steps to shield these documents from its release?
I mean, they've never wanted to release the documents, in spite of what the vice president said during the campaign and the attorney general even after she took office. I think they're still trying to protect rich billionaires, politically connected people, and I think they're also trying to obscure the involvement of our own intelligence agencies in this.
And I mean, this happened a little while ago, but it's the first time that you're back since the SDNY announcing that it had 1 million more files in its possession that it passed on to main justice. What do you make of that, and how do you think a lapse can happen in that sense of they just found 1 million more documents well after the deadline?
Well, again, it's not about quantity. Yeah, they've got 1 million more documents, which might be 5 million pages. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of what they're releasing. And right now they are trying to release nothing, even while they release a large volume of material. And why are they just finding it now? They should have known about this a long time ago. I mean, Pam Bondi said she had found a trove of documents back last spring. That she
that's true. Pam Bondi said, so Trump got elected. One of his big promises was to release the Epstein files. Then he got elected. Epstein files aren't released. Pam Bondi tweets out, "The files are on my desk, coming soon." And you know, that was like a little under a year ago, right? So, and you know, the word soon is funny because you never really know what soon means, because Jesus is coming back soon. You know, soon to us isn't soon to God. And I guess soon to us isn't soon to the administration either, you know? So regardless, that all fell apart. And so for months, and also like there was a Chuck Schumer, the Democrat lead or majority House, not sure, he's like the head Democrat right now, you know, and he called for a recess. And so another deadline missed like a few months ago, whenever, you know, Epstein files are like heating up, like we need to get this down, need to get this out there, and then they couldn't agree on stuff, and then they took a 2-week vacation, right? And now, you know, all these massive crises are happening, and we're still not getting the files, right? And this is like the most important thing, I feel like, and it just keeps getting pushed on the back burner. And they're tiptoeing on a fine line where are people eventually going to get sick of this? I mean, I know people are sick of it, but I mean, to the point where shit hits the fan? I don't know. Or is it just going to continue like this the whole administration? Trump has no chance of being reelected. This is his second term. But there is a chance of martial law happening if there is a revolt, and then he would stay in office, or war and he would stay in office, right? And so I'm thinking that people are trying to prevent that, right? Now, Thomas Massey here, I think he is one of the good ones, but it almost seems like he's kind of given up. It seems like he seems kind of defeated already, you know? And I can't blame him, because, I mean, just yesterday I was feeling really defeated, you know? I mean, just the whole Minnesota thing and the way people reacted to it too, like, that's a loss of life, you know, and people were celebrating. And it's the same way I felt with Charlie Kirk, you know? I mean, and to the people that were celebrating when Charlie Kirk died, you know how it feels on your side now. So let's all agree to not celebrate the loss of human life. You know what I mean? Regardless of if we disagree with the people or not, human life is not something to mess around with. You know, it's sacred. You know, so I really don't know how else to put it. Let's just not celebrate the loss of human life. You know, let's see what else he has to say, and then I might go back to the Minnesota thing, because there's a couple more things.
Reviewing, and then that went away. That's the other thing. They've had a year to comply with this, since this was a campaign promise. And so they shouldn't be taken by surprise by this deadline, and they shouldn't have missed it, and they shouldn't have missed the second deadline, because the second deadline is different than the first deadline.
Isn't this treason? I mean, I don't know for sure, you know, I'm not a lawyer. You know, I try to be as educated as I can, but this does seem like treason. It seems like you're given multiple deadlines to comply with Congress, That's the whole checks and balances thing. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, but there's checks and balances. So you have the executive branch, which is the president and his administration or hers, and the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court and all that, and then the legislative, which is Congress and the Senate. And they're all supposed to keep each other in check so there's no corruption. And very clearly, this is the executive branch overriding the legislative branch for a year, continuing to miss deadlines, continuing to just blow it off like it doesn't matter. And, instead of we should be doing a massive internal investigation, and instead we're invading Venezuela, and I can't really, I don't think it was, indirectly it was Trump's order to, what happened with ICE in Minnesota, but he didn't directly order that. But Venezuela was a direct order from Trump. That was an operation, and that should not be happening, right? Now, speaking of Venezuela, I want to show you guys something. How much money has America made off Venezuelan oil since the invasion? Okay. AI response. Let's see what it has to say. So, the U.S. hasn't made money directly from Venezuelan oil in a traditional sense, but rather through deals allowing companies like Chevron to operate, generating profits for them and providing U.S. refineries with needed heavy crude, while the Trump administration recently arranged to seize 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, worth billions, to sell, controlling proceeds amidst sanctions following the recent invasion. The primary financial benefit to the U.S. comes from private companies earning revenue and the government controlling seized oil funds, not from direct state-to-state sales, with Chevron alone seeing $3.6 billion in a recent quarter from its Venezuelan operations. So Chevron, with renewed licenses, produces Venezuelan heavy crude, which their Gulf Coast refineries are designed to process. $3.6 billion in one quarter. And a quarter is just 3 months. It's a quarter of a year. Seized oil sales, so 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, worth billions, to be sold by the U.S., with proceeds controlled by Washington. Let's see. There's a lot to this. Let's see. These oil developments follow the recent January 2026 abduction. Financial impact, the U.S. government. Is positioned to gain millions from selling the seized crude, offsetting national debt and securing strategic energy. So, yeah, I said this before. That is one benefit of this, and hopefully we will climb our way out of debt a little bit. But it's on the backs of another nation, so it's it's kind of blood money, and so if I was in debt, I wouldn't want to get out of it through blood money, personally. But regardless, that's one technically positive from it, and so the whole, we invaded because it was a narco-terrorism, fentanyl, drug cartel, and all that was proven to be false. So this was a illegal operation, and then they've had a year to comply with the Epstein demands, and they have not. They've pushed it off, just straight up ignoring deadlines. I believe that's treason, right? So that's what's going on. That's our little recap. Real quick, there's another video. So that Thomas Massie video was from 2 days ago, and this is House members are pushing the Department of Justice to release more Epstein files 3 hours ago by the Associated Press. Of course, we're gonna have to watch an ad. Sorry, guys.
Discover Heritage Ranch, an inviting community of beautiful single-family homes and on-site amenities located in Sherman, Texas.
What are you hoping to hear or see from the DOJ moving forward as it relates to the Epstein files?
That's a great question. They've said, we've got 1 million documents, and which could be 4 million pages.
And see, Thomas Massie, it's funny because it's Thomas Massie again. He's the only guy talking about this. He's the only guy worth a shit in Congress. Now there's a couple promising people coming, but as for right now, this is the only guy I see actually making moves.
What we want very specifically are just a few hundred pages, and these are the 302 forms that the FBI fills out when they interview the victims and they interview witnesses. We also want draft indictments where they were going to indict a lot of people or bring a lot more counts against Jeffrey Epstein and then decided not to. The problem is our bill specifically...
Look at that freaking smile, dude. You just like, he just knew he was getting away with, you know, obviously he killed himself, but and I mean there's theories that he's in Israel right now. I think I don't want to promote misinformation, but there was a picture circulating. It obviously could be AI or whatever, but there was a picture of him spotted in Israel just recently. Regardless, either way, I mean he did have connections to Mossad and IDFs, which that's confirmed. So it's very possible. But what he didn't kill himself, that's for sure. You know, he was either killed or they want us to believe he's dead, you know. Either way, this was a massive honeypot organization to try to get our people in power, the government, politicians, presidents, massive, you know, people with a bunch of money, the American elites. It was a honeypot organization to get them, to blackmail them and have undying allegiance to Israel. He's confirmed to be Mossad, IDF connections. I'm not saying he is Mossad, but he is connected to them, or was. So, yeah.
Anticipated that and said they have to release internal communications having to do with decisions about whether to prosecute or not prosecute. So we think they're clearly in violation of the law. And that's one of the big reasons we want the judge to appoint a special master to kind of oversee what's going on here with these redactions. It's not the volume of material they're giving us, it's the material they're not giving us that we're concerned about.
The Trump administration, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Pam Bondi, are engaged in one of the greatest cover-ups that we have seen when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and protection of people that are in power.
And so we have AOC here who, yeah, she's a little too young to be on the Epstein files, so I doubt she's on them. And it's good that she's, you know, pushing for this. You know, that's kind of one thing is like, you can disagree with some, like Thomas Massie and AOC disagree on pretty much everything, you know. Thomas Massie's not a Democrat, you know. I wouldn't necessarily call him a Republican either, but AOC is like a hardcore liberal leftist, you know. That's just what she is. They have many differences, but they can kind of put those aside to work on what's really important, which is the Epstein files, you know. That's so what I'm saying is we need to be able to do that in our personal lives and also just kind of follow suit. You can join teams. Like, think about Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, all right? I know it's a fictional show, but they had many disagreements, many problems. When it really counted, for the most part, they worked together, you know? Just recently, it's the reason why I'm bringing this up is a show me and my girlfriend are watching. But like just recently, without trying to give too many spoilers, Walter was going to be killed, and Jesse saved his life, even though he didn't want to. And regardless, either way, they had differences and they worked together. That's exactly what, you know, that's what we need in government right now. We need Republicans and Democrats who aren't pedophiles to work together, you know. And once we have that, then some stuff can actually start getting done, you know. Put aside your differences and work towards a common good. That's all I'm asking.
Close to power. It is horrifying. My thoughts are with the victims, but what I am encouraged by is the House Oversight Committee's continued pursuit in their subpoenas against Lex Wexner and others.
Okay. So, those are our updates on the current situations for the night. Let's see, Maduro, Thomas Massie, and the new point of view. Real quick, let's see if anything else is going to be said about it. Let's see. Judge to temporarily block effort to end protections for relatives of citizens. Oh, and there's also a massive protest happening in Iran right now. Let's you know, let's look at that real quick. Actually, let me finish this recap video. Sorry, but let's add that. Let's add that to the list. Open image in new tab. Or image, no. Open Lincoln. There we go. Okay. Wife of Minnesota woman in ICE shooting says, we had whistles, they had guns. So yeah, honestly, that's all there is to really see about it. We just saw that video. We saw the new angle. You know, PTSD is very common. It's very possible he thought he was acting in self-defense. Obviously, in hindsight with cameras, it's very clear that he was out of harm's way. I think that minimum, he should be removed from his duties. And the problem is that the government is not, the administration is not even going to do that. They're 100% supporting him, saying it's absolute immunity. And that's the main problem I have with this. And I think everyone else this should be everyone else's main problem too. Regardless, we'll go through this news in a little bit, but that is our recap for the night. We're going to go in and get into the foreign influence, and it actually has ties to Venezuela because of the oil. So real quick,